I never thought a harmless decision could turn into something so devastating. It's almost surreal, looking back at everything now, how one moment, one little choice, could unravel everything I built. If I had known, if I had truly understood what I was about to lose, maybe I would have done things differently. But I didn't, and now, I'm standing here in the wreckage of my marriage, wondering how the hell I let it get this far. Nathan and I had what most people would call a perfect relationship. We were the kind of couple that made people envious, stable, happy, solid, at least. That's what I always told myself. We met in college, fell in love fast, and got married right after graduation. We built a life together. A quiet and peaceful one. And for a long time, I thought that was all I needed. Nathan was the kind of guy who never lost his cool. No matter what happened, he always remained steady, calm, and logical. At first, I loved that about him. It felt safe. He wasn't the jealous or possessive type. And he never doubted me. There was never any drama. No baseless accusations. No fights over stupid things. When other girls complained about their boyfriends getting jealous over harmless interactions, I'd smile to myself, thinking how lucky I was to have a man so secure in our relationship. But over time, that security started to feel like indifference. It wasn't that Nathan was a bad husband. Far from it. He was supportive of my career, always remembered the little things that mattered, and never once failed to show up for me when I needed him. But there was something missing, something small, yet undeniable. Passion. I wanted to feel like I was irreplaceable to him, like he couldn't imagine his life without me. But instead, it felt like, if I disappeared tomorrow, he'd just shrug, wish me well, and move on with his life. I told myself I was overthinking it, that I was being ungrateful. I mean, isn't this the kind of love everyone wants? A mature, stable love built on trust and respect? And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Whenever I went out with my friends and came home late, all I'd get was a casual, "Glad you had fun. Hope you were safe." No questions, no curiosity. If I told him someone had hit on me at a bar, he'd chuckle and say something like, "Well, of course they did. You're beautiful." Then he'd kiss my forehead and go back to whatever he was doing. And that's what scared me the most. I wanted to see a flicker of something, jealousy, possessiveness, protectiveness, anything to show me that I mattered to him in that deep, emotional way. I didn't need him to be controlling. And I certainly didn't want a toxic, obsessive relationship. But I wanted to feel like he saw me. Instead, it felt like I was just there, like an old, comfortable sweatshirt he loved but never thought twice about. So, I did what I thought was the mature thing to do. I talked to him about it. It wasn't easy to bring up. I felt ridiculous. Honestly, what kind of woman complains that her husband trusts her too much? But I knew if I kept letting this fester, it would only grow worse. So one night, after dinner, I sat him down. "Nate," I started, already feeling embarrassed. "Can I talk to you about something?" He looked up from his laptop, giving me his full attention the way he always did. "Of course. What's up?" I hesitated, suddenly unsure how to phrase what I was feeling. "Do you ever, I don't know, feel jealous? About anything?" He blinked, clearly thrown off by the question. "Jealous? About what?" "About me. About other guys. About anything like that?" He tilted his head slightly, considering his answer. "Not really. I mean, I trust you. I know you love me. What's there to be jealous about?" And just like that, my heart sank. I forced a smile. "Yeah, that makes sense." But he wasn't fooled. "Hey," he said softly, setting his laptop aside. "Talk to me. What's really going on?" I took a deep breath. "It's not that I want you to be jealous in a bad way. Sometimes, I feel like you don't care enough. Like, if I disappeared tomorrow, you'd just keep going like nothing happened." His brows furrowed. "Emily, that's not true." "Then why'd I feel like it is?" Silence stretched between us. Finally, he sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Look, I get it, but that's not who I am. I've always believed that if someone wants to stay, they will, and if they want to leave, no amount of jealousy or possessiveness will change that." His words made sense. They always did. That was Nathan, calm, rational, logical. But it wasn't what I wanted to hear. I wanted him to say he couldn't bear the thought of losing me. That the idea of another man even looking at me made his blood boil. That he needed me as much as I needed him. But that wasn't Nathan. He reached for my hand and squeezed it gently. I love you, Emily. I don't need to prove that through jealousy. You're my wife. You're my person. And for a moment, I told myself that should be enough. But it wasn't. That little voice in my head whispered, if he really loved you, he'd fight for you. I shook it off, forcing myself to accept his words. But even as I smiled and reassured him that I understood, I knew something had shifted inside me. I couldn't let it go. I wanted proof that I mattered. And that's where everything started to go wrong. I should have let it go. I should have accepted that Nathan wasn't the kind of man who got jealous. That his love was steady and unwavering, not wild and possessive. But I didn't. Instead, I let the doubt fester. At first, it was just little things. Small, harmless actions. At least, that's what I told myself. When we were out with friends, I laughed a little louder at Jake's jokes, touched Daniel's arm when I talked, leaned in a little too close when speaking to men at social gatherings. It wasn't cheating, not really. It was just a test. A game. I wanted Nathan to notice. I wanted to see something in his eyes other than that infuriating calm. But nothing. He would smile, maybe chuckle at something I said, and go right back to his conversation. If he saw me talking to other men, he'd simply ask if I was having a good time and move on. It drove me crazy, so I started pushing harder. At work, my boss, Ryan, had been extra friendly. I could feel the way his eyes lingered on me. How he always found a reason to stop by my desk. I should have shut it down. I should have kept things professional. But instead, I let it happen. I encouraged it. Ryan flirted openly, and instead of brushing it off, I leaned into it. Nothing inappropriate, nothing physical, just casual flirting. Playful banter. A compliment here, a lingering glance there. It was harmless, right? Just a way to feel seen. To feel wanted. And maybe, just maybe, if Nathan found out, he'd finally react. But he didn't. One night, after a work event, I mentioned how Ryan had been extra charming that evening. I made it sound innocent. But I made sure Nathan knew. I watched his face carefully, waiting for a flicker of irritation, a spark of jealousy. Instead, he just smiled. Ryan's always been a charmer. Did you have fun? I felt my stomach twist. That's all you have to say? I asked, my voice a little sharper than I intended. What do you want me to say? I don't know. Maybe something other than, did you have fun? Nathan set his fork down, watching me carefully. I trust you. And just like that, the conversation ended. He trusted me. The words should have reassured me. Should have been enough. But instead, they felt like a slap in the face. Was I really that unimportant to him? Did he not care at all? I didn't realize it at the time. But that night was the turning point. The moment I made a choice I couldn't take back. The moment I decided to push even harder. The game turns dangerous. If the little tests weren't enough to get a reaction from Nathan, then maybe I needed to go bigger. I started dressing up more, putting extra effort into my appearance, not for Nathan, but for the way other men looked at me. I went out more, stayed out later. I made sure Nathan knew I was getting attention from other men. But no matter what I did, he never lost his composure. Even when I came home tipsy after a night out with my friends, giggling about how a random guy at the bar had bought me a drink, all Nathan did was make sure I got to bed safely and tell me to drink some water before sleeping. No anger, no jealousy, no fight. I wanted him to fight for me, to pull me close and tell me he didn't want me flirting with other men, to remind me that I was his. Instead, I was met with nothing but patience. And it infuriated me. Ryan, on the other hand, was different. He noticed. He complimented me, flirted more boldly, made me feel wanted. And when he invited me to dinner, just the two of us, I said yes. The night that changed everything. That night, Nathan suggested we go out for dinner together. Looking back, I think he was trying to fix things, trying to reconnect. But I didn't give him the chance. Actually, I said, I already have dinner plans. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Oh, with who? I hesitated for only a second before lying. Some coworkers. Ryan's treating us for finishing the project. It wasn't completely false. Ryan had mentioned celebrating our recent work success. But there were no other coworkers going. Nathan nodded. All right, have fun. I waited for him to ask more questions. Waited for him to insist on coming along. But he didn't. I was angry. More than that, I was hurt. I wanted him to care. Instead, he just kissed me on the cheek, told me to be safe, and went back to his book. So I went. And it was exactly what I expected. Ryan was charming, attentive, flirty. The drinks kept flowing, and I let myself enjoy the attention. I laughed too loudly, let him sit too close, let the lines blur just enough to feel something. When the night ended, he offered to drive me home. And I hesitated. For just 1 second, I could have said no. Could have walked away and gone home to my husband. But instead, I let him. Nothing happened, not really. But that wasn't the point. I wasn't acting like a married woman that night. I walked through the front door, expecting to see Nathan asleep or watching TV. But instead, he was sitting on the couch, looking right at me. He knew. He didn't yell. He didn't accuse me of anything. He just asked, "How was dinner?" And for the first time, I couldn't meet his eyes. I mumbled something about it being fine and went straight to bed. My stomach twisting in knots. I told myself it was nothing. That I hadn't done anything wrong. But deep down, I knew I had crossed a line. And I knew Nathan had felt it, too. The shift. The days after that were different. Nathan wasn't angry. He wasn't cruel. But something had changed. He stopped asking me how my day was. Stopped reaching for me at night. The warm, steady presence I had taken for granted for so long was suddenly distant. And I hated it. I tried to overcompensate, talking to him more, planning little surprises, but none of it worked. He was slipping away, and I didn't know how to stop it. One night, I finally snapped. "Why are you acting like this?" I demanded. Nathan looked at me, his face unreadable. Like what? Like you don't care anymore. He exhaled slowly, because I'm starting to think I don't. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had pushed him too far. And I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to fix it. Nathan was slipping away from me. And no matter how hard I tried to reach him, it felt like my hands were grasping at air. After that night, after he told me he was starting to think he didn't care, everything between us changed. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't screaming or door slamming. It was worse. It was silence. Nathan had always been calm. But now he was distant in a way I had never seen before. He still spoke to me. But only when necessary. He still slept in the same bed. But he no longer reached for me at night. He still said, "Good morning," and "Good night." But the warmth was gone. I was losing him. And I hated it. Desperation. I started trying harder. I asked him about his day more than usual. Planned little dates. Made his favorite meals. Did everything I could think of to remind him of what we had. Nothing worked. It was like I had already lost him. And he was just waiting for me to realize it. Then, one evening, as we sat in near silence at the dinner table, I finally broke. "Nate," I whispered, setting my fork down. "Can we talk?" He looked up at me. His face unreadable. "About what?" "Us." He didn't sigh, didn't look annoyed, he just nodded. "Okay." I swallowed hard, my hands shaking slightly. "I know I messed up. I know I've been acting out and doing things to get a reaction out of you. I don't even know why. I wanted to feel like you cared." His expression didn't change. He just listened, patiently, as always. And I know it was stupid. I continued, my voice cracking. "I should have just talked to you instead of trying to push you. I was wrong, Nate. And I'm sorry. But I don't want to lose you. Please, tell me how to fix this." He was quiet for a long time. Then, he exhaled slowly and leaned back in his chair. "Emily," he said softly, "I don't think you really want me." My heart stopped. "What? You want something else? Someone else?" "No." I shook my head. panic rising in my chest. I want you. I love you. He gave me a sad smile. No, you love the idea of who you want me to be. But that's not who I am. It's never been who I am. I reached for his hand across the table, but he pulled away gently. I tried, he continued, his voice quiet but firm. I really did. I wanted to be enough for you. But I see it now, you've been looking for something I can't give you. And I can't keep pretending I don't see it. I felt like I couldn't breathe. So what? I choked out. You're just giving up? His jaw tensed. And for the first time, I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, not anger. Not resentment, but exhaustion. Emily, he said, his voice heavy, you gave up on us a long time ago. The end of everything. The next morning, Nathan packed a bag. It wasn't a fight. He didn't yell. He didn't slam the door. He just left. I begged him to stay. Told him we could fix it. Told him I would change. But he had already made up his mind. For the first time, I realized that I had done exactly what I was afraid he would do. I had pushed him away. And now, he was gone. Aftermath. The weeks that followed were a blur. I cried constantly. I barely ate, barely slept. The apartment felt empty without him. Too quiet, too cold. I kept hoping he would come back. That this was just a temporary break. That he just needed time. But then the divorce papers came. And I knew there was no coming back from this. I tried everything. I called. I texted. I begged for another chance. I told him I would quit my job. Cut off all contact with Ryan. Do anything if it meant we could fix this. But Nathan didn't budge. The only thing he ever said to me was, please. Just sign them. So, eventually, I did. Rock bottom. I had lost everything. Nathan was gone. My marriage was over. My family. My friends. Even his family. Everyone had turned against me. You pushed him away. My mother had said, her voice filled with disappointment. And now you have to live with that. Even his mom, who had always been polite, even warm towards me, completely cut me off. I had never felt more alone in my life. And work? That was its own disaster. Ryan, the man I had once used to try and get a reaction from my husband, showed his true colors soon after Nathan left. The subtle flirting turned into something more aggressive. One day, he crossed the line, badly. And suddenly, I saw him for exactly who he was. It had never been about my work. It had never been about my talent. He had just been waiting for the right moment to take advantage. I reported him to HR immediately. I had no idea if it would actually change anything. But I didn't care. And then, I did something I should have done a long time ago. I quit. Starting over. Walking away from that job was terrifying. I had no backup plan. No idea what I was going to do next. But I knew I couldn't stay. I picked up a part-time job to cover expenses while I figured things out. And, for the first time in a long time, I started thinking about what I wanted. Not Nathan, not my marriage, not the validation I had been chasing. Me. I started a small business, nothing huge, nothing life-changing, but it was mine. Something to keep me from completely falling apart. But my living situation? That was another nightmare entirely. I had a new roommate, Brittany, and she was the worst. She was messy, inconsiderate, and completely oblivious to personal boundaries. At first, I tolerated it because I was too emotionally drained to care. But after months of cleaning up after her, dealing with her constant noise, and feeling like I was losing the last bit of control I had over my life, I reached my breaking point. The lease was almost up. And I knew I had two choices. 1. Stay and keep clinging to the past, drowning in memories of Nathan. 2. Leave and finally start fresh. I wasn't sure what the right choice was. But for the first time in a long time, I knew one thing for certain. It was time to stop looking backward. It was time to move on. Life after Nathan felt like walking through a fog, thick, heavy, suffocating. Every day felt the same. A dull repetition of loneliness and regret. I had lost him. I had lost the one person who had always been steady. The one person who had loved me without question. And it was all because I wanted more passion, more validation, more proof that I mattered. And now, I had nothing. The divorce that broke me. The day our divorce was finalized, I sat in that cold courtroom, barely holding myself together. Nathan was there too, sitting across from me, looking just as calm and composed as ever. He didn't look at me with anger or hatred. He just looked done. That hurt more than anything. It was over in less than an hour. 4 years of marriage, gone in minutes. I walked out of the courthouse feeling hollow, like a part of me had been ripped away. Nathan didn't linger. He didn't turn back. He just walked away, disappearing into the crowd like I had never been part of his life. And that's when it hit me. I was officially alone, falling apart. The first few weeks after the divorce were brutal. I spent most nights curled up on the couch, eating junk food and watching movies Nathan used to love. It was stupid, torturing myself like that, but I couldn't stop. Everywhere I looked, I saw him. His empty side of the bed. The coffee mug he used to use. The spot on the couch where he always sat. I thought about texting him every single day. But I knew he wouldn't answer. I had already begged, pleaded, promised I would change. But Nathan didn't want to hear it. He was done. And eventually, I had to accept that. Walking away from the past. If my marriage was over, then there was no point in holding onto a job that made me miserable. So I quit. Ryan had been getting bolder ever since Nathan left. And when he finally crossed the line, I had enough. I reported him to HR immediately. And the fallout was swift. I don't know if he got fired or just transferred. I didn't care. I was done. I walked out of that office with no job and no plan. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was making a decision for myself. A new beginning, sort of. Quitting my job was freeing. But it didn't solve my problems. I still had rent to pay, bills, responsibilities. So, I picked up a part-time job while trying to figure out what to do next. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept me afloat. And then, on a whim, I decided to take a leap. I started my own small business. It wasn't much, just a side hustle at first, but it was mine. Something to focus on, something to build, something that didn't revolve around Nathan, the roommate from hell. As if my life wasn't already a mess. I also had Brittany to deal with. When I first moved in with her, I thought she'd be tolerable. Maybe even a friend. I was wrong. She was the worst kind of roommate, messy, loud, and completely oblivious to personal space. She left dirty dishes in the sink for days, blasted music at all hours, and treated me like her personal maid. At first, I put up with it. I was too emotionally drained to fight her on every little thing. But after weeks of stepping over her dirty laundry and cleaning up after her messes, I snapped. Brittany, can you please clean up after yourself? She rolled her eyes, barely looking up from her phone. Relax, Emily, it's just a few dishes. A few? There's mold growing in one of them. She shrugged. Then don't look at it. I wanted to scream. Instead, I clenched my jaw and told myself that I just had to survive until the lease was up. 2 more months. Then, I was out. Letting go. One night, after another pointless argument with Brittany, I sat in my room, staring at my phone. I had been fighting the urge for weeks. But that night, I finally gave in. I texted Nathan. I miss you. I stared at the screen. Heart pounding, waiting for the 3 little dots to appear. They never did. He didn't answer. Not that night. Not the next day. Not ever. And that's when I finally understood. Nathan wasn't just ignoring me. He had moved on. For him, I was already part of the past. And for the first time, I realized I needed to let him go. Moving forward, I stopped checking his social media. Stopped looking at old pictures. Stopped waiting for a text that would never come. Instead, I focused on myself. I put everything I had into my small business. I started working out again. Eating better. Actually taking care of myself. And when the lease was finally up, I packed my bags and moved into a new apartment, my apartment. No more toxic roommates. No more ghosts of the past. Just me. Starting over. The first step. One night, as I was unpacking in my new place, my phone buzzed. I expected it to be my mom or one of the few friends I had left. But when I looked at the screen, my heart stopped. It was Nathan. I hope you're doing okay. That was it. No, I miss you. No, let's talk. Just a simple message. I stared at it for a long time, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. For months, I had been waiting for this. For him. And now that he had finally reached out, I realized something. I didn't need his validation anymore. I still loved him. Maybe I always would. But I couldn't keep holding on to someone who had already let me go. So, for the first time in my life, I made the right choice. I put my phone down. And I walked away. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, it really helps out. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. I've got plenty more stories coming your way, so stay tuned for the next one. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.